Hey guys, welcome back to another update brought to you by Declan Storms, and today we're tracking Hurricane Raphael, which could become a major hurricane before landfall. On landfall, it was rapidly intensifying earlier on this morning. It's steady intensifying now, but it could make a run for 120 miles an hour, but I hardly doubt it. But there is Florida, you still could get tropical storm force winds, even though it's not been making landfall near you. Key West in Florida, you guys could have some tropical storm warnings. Right now, they have a pressure that is 110 miles an hour with a pressure, I think, of 960 millibars, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, a 95. So here there's a maximum sustained winds is 95 knots, which is 110 miles an hour. The minimum central pressure of 960 millibars, moving north, located at 21.4 degrees north and 81.9 degrees west. Movement at 12 knots, which is 14 miles an hour. Okay, so it is meant to be heading into the Gulf of Mexico. Now, when it moves into the Gulf of Mexico, environmental conditions will appear less conducive for the system, which means in November, it won't have enough to maintain its intensity or strengthen, because there's a trough coming down from the US, which will pull this towards the east more, and plus the trough will produce a lot more wind shear, and plus the dry air is coming from Mexico, which will suffocate the system and make it weaken. But by the time it heads towards either Texas or Mexico, wherever the storm makes landfall, it's uncertain at the moment. But wherever this storm does make landfall, it will be significantly weaker in the US if it makes landfall in the US as a tropical storm or Mexico. There is a tropical depression right now in the Eastern Pacific. I think it's TD14. I think. I hardly think it is. Yeah, TD14E right now. I think it's expected to become a borderline tropical storm as it heads towards the south. So potentially this could become a very weak tropical storm. If it wanted to become a hurricane or a major hurricane, it probably would have had to form more further towards the Mexican coastline, where it has more favourable conditions, like a lot more warm waters, less wind shear, less dry air. If it wanted to become a major hurricane, but I highly doubt it, as soon as we get its name, it's going to get sheared to bits from the wind shear that's moving south, because you don't usually have storms that move south in the Eastern Pacific. They either move west or northwest, or they either move northeast, or they move east or west. Majority of them just move towards the northwest or west-northwest and head towards Hawaii and then die off. You don't usually see a track like this in the Eastern Pacific. It has happened before, about a couple of times, but they do want a 40 mile an hour peak. So if this does get named, this will probably be the next named storm, which I'm not sure what the next named storm is actually. I'll have a look. I think the next named storm in the Pacific will be Miriam. So it'll be Miriam. So if this does get named, it'll become Tropical Storm Miriam, which will be, I believe, the 14th named storm of the season. So far, the season has caused over $1 billion of damage in Mexico. That's mainly from John. The strongest storm has been Christy, however you want to say it, with 160 mile an hour winds. But that's not going off topic. So the NHC do hint of Hurricane Raphael becoming a powerful cat 3 hurricane before landfall. Right now on satellite it looks so good on IR. You can see the outer bands, which is just really making the storm stand out. You got lots of inflow, which is wrapping that moisture into the eye wall, and the eye is trying to pop out. I believe the eye is a 15 to 10 nautical mile wide eye. It's 110 miles an hour right now. I think there's a recon plane going out. Yes, there is. There's a recon plane going out right now from Louisiana. So they should be in the storm in the next hour or two. And they might confirm it as a cat 3. I believe it's a cat 3 right now. I definitely do think it's a major hurricane right now, for sure. And we do have a major typhoon out there as well. We have Typhoon Yinxing, or Typhoon Yaxing, or Yixing, however you will pronounce it. 100 knots. I believe it's a cat 4 now, because I think this typhoon is rapidly intensifying. It still has a few good days of conditions, but when it gets past the Philippines, that's when it's going to start weakening, as a lot more wind shear and dry air will significantly cancel this out when it gets into the South China Sea. But it probably will make landfall on Vietnam as a very weak tropical storm, maybe a tropical depression at best. But I will show you satellite imagery for this system, because it's really looking good. The Typhoon Yixing right now, a massive eye, but I believe it's a cat 4. I believe it's got winds of 130 miles an hour and a pressure of 945 millibars, I think. But you can see it's blown up some significant convection. It's got a pretty round symmetrical eye. Yes, it's a little bit wobbly because it's only just came out, but it is generally moving towards the west-northwest. So if you live in Manila and northern Luzon, you have to there is probably signal 1, signal 2 warnings out in northern Luzon. You can expect typhoon conditions around about 75 kilometers an hour to 85 kilometers an hour, which is, I believe, between 50 miles an hour and 100 mile an hour winds. So you can expect over 100 kilometers an hour winds in Luzon in the Philippines. The rainfall will be quite significant actually in the northern Philippines and those islands there, in the Batanes Islands. Batanes Islands, you guys are in the fire line. Whether it makes landfall or whether the eye goes north of you or south of you, you still will have the eye wall anyway, because the eye is probably about 30 miles wide, 40 miles wide. So that will fit the 3 islands that are towards the south in the eye wall anyway. So far, the storm has a lot of inflow, which, like what I was talking about with Raphael, and the outflow is also pretty good as well. But as I was saying about Raphael, as soon as Yixing moves out of those Batanes Islands, when it gets into the South China Sea, or just before it gets into the South China Sea, it will get sheared to death by a strong wind shear, and the dry air will choke the system's core and will significantly weaken the storm to tropical storm status. Not rapid weakening, but like quick weakening. Bit like when cat4 did when it made landfall in Taiwan. It didn't rapidly weaken, it quickly weakened until it moved off the coast of Taiwan, and that's when it's rapidly weakened. But the forecast model runs, I show you both the Atlantic and the Western Pacific. There's no point in showing the East Pac because the East Pac is dead right now. They are initializing Raphael to be a lot weaker than it is right now. But yeah, they do have landfall. They do have landfall in Cuba, and then they have it actually intensifying a little bit more in the Gulf, and that's in like the very far southern Gulf before the wind shear tears it apart, and then it just gets completely sheared to bits by the wind shear in the Gulf, and it weakens, and then could have another storm which could become Tropical Storm Sarah, which has a pretty much brief spin up unless that's a tropical depression, and then we could have tropical storm. We could have the T name storm, and we could also have the V name storm as well. And we could also have 2 more named storms as well. So if we have 2 more named storms, if these ones do become the 2 named storms, we could get past the official naming list and get into the auxiliary naming list. And the first name on the auxiliary naming list is Adrian. I don't think we're going to get that far, but I do think we might possibly get 18, maybe 19 named storms in the Atlantic this year if 2 more storms do form, which I am anticipating, because next week I do think we're going to have I do think the NEC will mark another area of formation or interest in the Southern Caribbean, near Haiti, and I do think they're going to mark one up here in the Bahamas, which could become subtropical. And then that will be the end of the Atlantic hurricane season, which has been pretty active, very active. I'll show you the Western Pacific because they do want another significant typhoon out there right now. They do want, from Sunday the 10th, they want 2 major cyclones out there. One 943 millibars, that's a cat4, heading towards the Philippines. That could be your first impact this year. And then they have another one which could become a cat5, 928 millibars. That's either borderline cat5 or high-end cat4. That would be a super typhoon, and that probably will be your second. That will probably be your second impact of the year as it heads towards Luzon. Significantly weaker though, which is good news. 951 millibars. That will probably be a weak cat. That'll probably be a weak cat 2. The high-end to mid-range cat 3 to high-end cat 2. And obviously it significantly weakens and then moves up towards Taiwan, which Taiwan does not need another storm because they've already been impacted by 2 storms this year, and they've already had over like $10 billion of damage. So we could have another 2 more storms on the horizon. I think the season might not be over in the West Pac because I think we could have one more storm. Then we could have one more powerful storm in December down here, whether it move towards the north or hit the Philippines. But don't forget, that is like 10 days out. That's like next week. So there's no point really, tracking it or marking it. But I'll show you the warnings for Raphael. But there is another area of interest which I forgot to show you, which could become the S name storm. Sarah, I think, is the next name storm in the Atlantic. they're giving that a 20% chance in the next 2 days and 30% chance in the next 7 days. So it might not form because of the stronger wind shear that's in the northern Atlantic compared to where Raphael is. Raphael is in more of a conducive environment in this area of interest. But I'll show you the warnings for Raphael. There is a hurricane warning in effect. So it says here, the government of the Cayman Islands have discontinued the hurricane warning from Little Cayman to Cayman Brac, and then there is a hurricane warning in effect for the Cuban provinces of Pena del Rio, Artemisa, La Habana, and Maybeer, Manza, and the Isle of Youth. Tropical storm warning is in effect for the Cuban province of Villa Cara, Quirafus, Santi Spirit, and Cielo de Avila, and lower middle Florida Keys from Key West to the west of the Channel 5 bridge. So that's your tropical storm watches, warnings, and hurricane warnings. I'm surprised they haven't issued tropical storm watches for the coast of Louisiana or Texas, which I am pretty surprised about that. But I understand why, because they don't know if it's going to make landfall in Mexico, or they don't know if it's going to make landfall in the US. But where the storm is right now, it's over an area of warmth, which is about 28 degree waters, which is warm, which is in a area of favorable waters. But it does decrease when it gets near the coast. So whether the storm will maintain its intensity or strengthens a little bit or weakens before landfall because of that cooler water there. But generally the whole of the Caribbean is at least a degree to 2 degrees above average in November right now. Where the Bahamas is, there is still warm water for tropical development, but if a storm does form like this and move up, the storm will significantly weaken when it gets over towards Bahamas, because there is splotches of 26 degree waters starting to come back, and those warm waters are starting to retreat further south in the Atlantic. And the Gulf of Mexico, the only warm parts of the Gulf of Mexico is off the coastline, is where I marked. So the Gulf Stream has still got 29 degree waters. So if Raphael moves off the coast, it could still be in 29 degree waters for a day, and then as soon as it moves out of those 29 degree waters, it will start weakening because of the waters will be cooler, and plus you have more wind shear and dry air up here. Yes, 27 degree waters is conducive for tropical development in the Atlantic, but at the same time, it's November. In November, it's very rare to get a major hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico. It has happened before with Hurricane Zeta back in 2020, but that was a borderline case. But this system won't be any stronger than 80 miles an hour in the Gulf of Mexico, which is good news, because the US does not need another major hurricane again. They've already been impacted by 2 majors this year, which potentially have caused over $100 billion of damage, which is significant. So, wrap the video up there. But yeah, the MDR is still warm, 29 degrees Celsius in November as well, which is significant, because usually the MDR starts cooling down in November, but it's still warm 27, 28, 29 degree waters, even some spots just a 30 degree waters. You can still see where the 30 degree waters are in the Caribbean. And if a storm forms over there, it'll have all the energy and still have all the conditions to become a very powerful storm. That's why some of the modern ones, the GFS was hinting of a cat4 or a cat5. And in that part where I circled, in this part of the Caribbean, where they wanted to become a cat5 or cat4 and move up towards Haiti. Now if that does happen, it'll probably be like a Matthew back from 2016. Similar track anyway, but probably will move more out towards the Atlantic and making landfall or grazing the coast of the US East Coast. So, I'm going to wrap the video up there, guys. Don't forget to stay tuned for another update on major hurricane Raphael later on today, on next landfall in Cuba as a major hurricane. But yeah, stay safe from Hurricane Raphael. Even if you live in the Batanes Island and Luzon, stay safe from typhoon yinxing, which is 130 miles an hour right now. On my analysis, I'll have it a cat4. So yeah, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share. Let's try and hit 100 subscribers by Christmas. That's my sub goal, and that would be really appreciated if we hit that. But I don't think we'll hit it by this year, which is unfortunate. But yeah. Anyway, I'll see you guys in the next video, and animation probably out later on. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, and peace.